Open the podcast bay doors, Hal.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 153 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I want to help others join me in those pursuits, but I've found that sometimes people can get overwhelmed or feel left out because they don't already have what some consider the requisite knowledge to be considered a fan. And that's where Welcome to Geektown comes in. Here, you can ask your questions without feeling like a gatekeeper is calling you out for not yet being fully versed in every aspect of your new interest. Last episode, we looked at an unusual vehicle from one of Marvel's biggest superheroes, the SuperMobile. This time, we're moving over to Marvel's former crosstown rival, now cross-country rival, DC. Sure, we could look at the Batmobile or the Invisible Jet or even the Aero car, but none of those are half as unique as the SuperMobile, and so that's what we'll be covering today. Like the SuperMobile discussed last time, the SuperMobile was created due to discussion between the comics company and a toy manufacturer. This time, an actual SuperMobile was being made by Corgi Toys, and writer Cary Bates and artist Curt Swan were given the task of bringing the toy into the comics. Bates was not a fan of doing this, saying later, quote, "In my opinion, whenever merchandising needs are dictating story content, the odds of any real creativity of inspiration are severely compromised." End quote. Well, let's see how he did within that restriction by diving into the story of the SuperMobile. Just to forewarn you, the Bronze Age pre-crisis Superman has some features that today feel quite silly in comparison to most modern superhero stories. While the SuperMobile makes its first appearance in Action Comics number 481, the story arc begins in the previous issue, number 480. Superman is sitting in the JLA satellite on monitor duty, when suddenly the android Amazo breaks through the floor and attacks, having been suddenly revived from its dormant state for no apparent reason. Up until then, it had been on display in the trophy room since its last defeat. Amazo and Superman break through the satellite wall and start battling in space, but the Man of Steel quickly notices that his powers are starting to fade, and with Amazo having all the powers of the Justice League, including his own, Superman is quickly defeated and lands unconscious in the ocean on Earth after being hit by a meteor that the android threw at him. He awakes to find his powers have returned, at least temporarily, as a shark bites him and breaks all of his teeth against Superman's invulnerable body. The Man of Steel then heads to the Fortress of Solitude to figure out what is going on. In order to exposit to the reader, Superman dictates his findings into a microphone which is attached through a computer to a large robot arm that translates his words into Kryptonese and laser etches them into a giant diary. I did warn you about the silly. What Superman has found is that a red star went nova in a distant galaxy billions of years ago, and that the red radiation from the explosion has reached Earth's solar system at this moment. In addition to the red star radiation draining Superman's powers, as it normally does in this continuity, it also somehow started Amazo back up, bringing him out of a peaceful electronic dream state. Superman completes this expository dialogue by telling us, his diary, that the radiation is still around and that he will be even weaker than ever within the next 12 hours. Logically, he calls to the JLA for help, who are now all gathered in the Justice League's satellite. However, Amazo is able to send the satellite into another dimension, basically trapping all of them in limbo. In the meantime, we cut back to WGBS. This is during the time when Lois and Clark's reporting was done on TV rather than through the Daily Planet newspaper, where boss Morgan Edge is randomly choosing which reporter will be sent to Death Valley to do a special assignment on desert survival techniques. Originally, Jimmy Olsen gets the assignment, but Clark uses his super hypnotism, with the help of a yo-yo, to make everyone think that he got the gig instead. This gives Clark a good reason to be away for a while. As he's leaving, he runs into Professor Ivo, who had shown up in a couple of panels previously in the story in disguise as Professor Ives. Professor Ivo is the original creator of Amazo and believes his life to be in danger from the powerful android. This is quickly proved correct as Amazo rips the roof off of the car the two are in. As Amazo grabs Ivo, who he mistakenly blames for reactivating him when all he wants is to go back to his dormant state, and flies away, Clark changes into Superman, blowing up the taxi he's in to cover his tracks, and flies off to rescue the professor. He briefly is able to get Ives away from Amazo, but due to the red radiation's return, Amazo quickly catches up, and in the final panel of issue number 480, we see Superman and Ivo about to get crushed by Amazo's fists. Okay, we've actually reached the issue with the SuperMobile. We find out at the beginning of this issue that Superman had hidden a teleport activator in his mouth, which brought him and Professor Ivo to the Fortress of Solitude at the same time that Amazo brought his fists down, making it look like the pair were completely destroyed. Superman shows Ivo some of the other Kryptonian technology he's created, including a mysterious device that we only see a very small portion of that he says may help turn the tide in the fight against Amazo. Because this is in the age before comic book stores, we get another nearly 2-page recap of what happened last issue, using the Kryptonian diary conceit once again. However, Superman is interrupted before he can completely finish the entry, as Amazo uses Flash's super speed to vibrate through the walls and enter the Fortress of Solitude. Superman distracts Amazo with an alien creature that he had released from his zoo earlier, off-panel, and uses this opportunity to run away and get into the SuperMobile, finally seen for the first time, other than its appearance on the cover of this issue. Of course, if you check out the show notes at the website, I'll include an image of the SuperMobile, but if you're unable to look right now, it's basically got an egg-shaped front with a transparent bubble cockpit and the tail of a fighter jet. It's blue and has the Superman logo on the front and on the top part of the tail, and a metallic fist sticking out of each side of the front half. The SuperMobile, or SMB as it gets called for short throughout the story, flies out of the fortress and the battle continues. My favorite part of this issue is that while this fight continues, we cut back to the JLA. For some reason, Amazo decided to broadcast the fight to the team, and so they narrate the battle between the android and the Man of Steel in this new SuperMobile. It's Batman who deduces that the vehicle must be made of supermanium, the strongest metal known, a material only seen in a handful of issues over Superman's now over 80-year history. In addition to being as invulnerable as Superman himself, the Man of Steel can recreate or channel nearly all of his powers through the SuperMobile, including all of his vision-based powers. Heat vision, X-ray vision, telescopic sight, and so on. And the fists I mentioned earlier can extend out and punch with Superman's strength. The SuperMobile is actually powered by Superman himself, as he's shielded from the red radiation while inside, and so is back to full strength as long as he doesn't get out of the SuperMobile. So there's no jets or engine of any sort. It's actually Superman flying around and pushing against the Supermobile from inside that propels it forward. The fight between the pair seems to be at a standstill, and Amazo flies off, but soon sends Superman a message, telling him to give up Ivo to the android, or Amazo will kill one of Superman's closest friends. That's how issue 481 ends, and basically how issue 482 starts, as Superman patrols Metropolis in the Supermobile, thinking about the choice he has to make. The story now cuts between Superman defeating some criminals trying to rob a local armory, and members of the WGBS news team discussing the SMB. This brief fight also shows off that Superman can also channel his super breath through the vehicle by blowing into a tube inside the Supermobile. After a couple of false threats, Amazo finally appears to Lois Lane, saying he's going to kill her because Superman refuses to give up Ivo. However, before he can make do on his threat, the fists of the SMB come crashing through the wall behind Lois and toss her into the air. Superman punches Amazo through the Supermobile, then flies up, catching Lois in the cockpit of the SMB as she begins her fall back down to Earth. Amazo catches up to the pair, grabs the Supermobile, and drop kicks it into space. In fact, the blow is so massive, it hurls Lois and Clark, and the SMB, through a time-space vortex of some sort, and Amazo follows closely behind. The acceleration of the trip, however, is crushing Lois, and so Superman slows the vehicle back down, bringing them back into normal space in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Luckily, Superman notices an undiscovered asteroid with a breathable atmosphere and lands there in order to stop and check on Lois. But Amazo quickly catches up to the pair and once again threatens to kill Lois unless Superman gives up Ivo. Well, it turns out Ivo had been hiding inside the secret pocket in Superman's cape, having been shrunk down to a size where he could fit in there, using the same technology that lets Superman visit the bottle city of Kandor, seen briefly in issue 481. Ivo gives himself up rather than let an innocent woman die. But before Amazo can kill his creator, Superman looks up and notices something about the planets, and then flies over to slam Amazo to the ground, trapping him in the meteor to everyone's surprise. Superman explains that the vortex they went through earlier sent them forward in time by 5 days, which he realized by observing the position of the planets, which was enough time for the red radiation to finish passing through the solar system. Superman lets Ivo, now back at full size, and Lois ride in the Supermobile back to Earth as he pushes his vehicle from the back. Amazo frees himself as the issue ends. The final issue of the story only has a brief appearance from the Supermobile as the trio finally arrive back on Earth. And while Superman does finally defeat Amazo in the final part of this 4-issue story arc, it's actually mostly concerned with the world having been kept awake for the past 5 days, due to the red radiation causing the Earth's planets to emit an invisible gas that prevents people from sleeping, though they continue to get more exhausted. It's kind of a strange turn, but as you can probably tell from the synopsis, it's a pretty strange story to begin with. Since that original tale, the Supermobile has only been used once more by Superman in mainstream continuity that I could find. That was just a few months after it first appeared, this time in Superman number 324, written by Marty Pasco and art by Kurt Swan. In this story, a kryptonite asteroid belt has surrounded Earth thanks to the machinations of the Atomic Skull, and Superman uses the Supermobile, to which Superman had added lead shielding sometime between its first appearance and now, in order to suck up the deadly asteroids. Other than that, the Supermobile has only shown up in brief, joking appearances, like on the sign for Funky Flashman's auto dealership in Tales of the Unexpected number 5 from 2007. Outside of comics, the Supermobile made multiple appearances in the Super Friends cartoon, and has been made into a toy 3 different times. The first was by Corgi Toys, as mentioned at the beginning of the episode. Corgi actually made two versions in different sizes. One about the size of a Matchbox or Hot Wheels car, and then a slightly larger 1 in 36 scale version. Then, Kenner later produced one large enough to put the Superpowers action figures inside. It was slightly different, however, in that the mechanical arms had been removed, and instead it had a Krypton action ram on the front. Most recently, McFarlane Toys made a Supermobile that fits their 5-inch action figures inside. Not only is it accurate to the original version, but it also is much more functional, as the fists can be extended and retracted using a dial on the bottom, and the canopy pops open by using the S-shield on the front. It looks like something I would have had a lot of fun with as a kid. And that really was the whole point of introducing the Supermobile in the first place, so well done, everyone involved. For the next few episodes, we're going back to a weekly schedule, as special guest Trek Nexus and I will discuss the latest Disney Plus Marvel show, Secret Invasion. Let us know who you think has secretly been a Skrull this entire time by sending in emails. Or you can let me know topics you'd like covered for future scripted episodes after we're done. Please send those in, or just comments on the show in general, to welcome2geektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome-to-geektown, Twitter @geektownpodcast, or Mastodon @welcome-to-geektown @mastodon.social. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, why not become a patron at patreon.com/welcome-to-geektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, audio outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show so we can all tell them, welcome to Geektown, population, us. Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Lovitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All of their sound clips are the copyrighted material of their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.